The year that I decided to grow a year's worth of food for my family was a year unlike any other that I have ever experienced. It started with a ton of research, going to the library, checking out 50 books at a time, and having the librarian look at you sideways because you were taking advantage of having multiple library cards. I spent hours upon hours diving deep into these books to figure out, how do I even build a garden? What type of soil should I use? Can I just use dirt from my pasture? Do I have to have compost? And where was I going to get this compost from? After that, it turned into figuring out what type of seeds I needed to plant, what could grow in the soil that we had here in the South, and what I needed to plant in raised beds. What things would tolerate the heat? How long did these things take before they would produce? And what type of nutrients and care did they need? It ended up turning into me stalking the local garden centers and farmer stores and just trying to glean information from random people on how they did their gardens, what types of things did they grow, and how they did it. I learned how to start thousands upon thousands of seedlings from seed. I learned that you don't need grow lights when you're starting these seeds, and you don't need a greenhouse if you can find a little corner in your house and set up a few small shelves there. My kids and I learned what it was to drive a tractor and to install this in-ground garden, how to stop the weeds from coming through by layering cardboard down and then alternating rows of wood chips and soil. We learned how to amend beds, what things to add and what things not to add. We also learned how much work it is to actually produce your food. I definitely learned what a blessing it is to have grocery stores and not have to think about harvesting and preserving, and just being able to have that ready-made food for you at the grocery store. Now, most of the garden work falls upon me. My husband works a full-time job and many nights is working into the early morning hours. So this is mostly my project, and I do most of the work. I do include the children quite a bit because without them, I could not get it done. We did learn how long it actually takes to water a garden of this size. It takes about 2 to 3 hours a day. So luckily, we learned how to put irrigation in. So now the garden is completely irrigated, and I don't have that task on my list to do every morning. I have found that growing a garden of this size does not give you any vacations or any days off. Whether it is raining or if it is 100 degrees outside, you still need to be down in that garden fighting pests, fighting disease on your plants, harvesting, pruning, tying up things that need to be trellised. You really don't get a day off, and if you think about taking a vacation for a few days, you know you're going to come back with a bunch of dead items that you worked so hard to get in the ground and have those things thrive and flourish. I have felt the back-breaking work of bringing in and harvesting and preserving your own food. I've learned what it is like to spend 8 hours a day, every day during the growing season, either in the garden or in my kitchen, preserving my harvest. I know what it is like to have shooting pains down my legs at the end of the day because I had to finish hilling up my corn and fertilizing my tomatoes. I have learned the great value that a lot of my older friends have, those people who have been gardening since they were children. The knowledge that they possess and what I can glean from them is amazing. I've also learned that it doesn't pay to buy cheap tools, and it doesn't pay to not have the right things on hand when you need them. If you're going to be doing this kind of work, you need to have pruning shears that are sharp enough to cut through plants. You need to have really good supportive shoes. After this year of growing food, I also know that you don't wear t-shirts when the main harvest time comes. You have to wear shirts that cover your arms and pants that cover your full legs. Otherwise, you will just be tearing at your skin, because when the leaves and foliage from the plants that you are harvesting from touches them and you're sweaty from the hot, hot sun, you will be so incredibly itchy. You would rather be clothed from head to toe than to deal with that amount of frustration. I have seen how beautiful the garden can look in spring and early summer, and just how horribly diseased and dying it looks by the end of that hot summer and into the fall. I know what it's like when you've planted everything out in the spring, you've spent your summer harvesting and preserving, and you're tired. And then in July, you have to start all over again because the fall time is coming and you need to get those fall seeds started. Just when you rip out your summer crops like your tomatoes and your corn, you're then planting in your brassicas like your broccolis and cabbages and cauliflowers and Brussels sprouts, just to do it all over again. I also know what it's like to enjoy those slow, slow winters. It is just a fantastic break, but I do know that I'm gonna have to start it all over again in the spring. We have tasted the success of homegrown tomatoes, cucumbers, garlic, lettuces, and we've also suffered the failures of, still to this day, not being able to produce one Brussels sprout no matter how hard I try, or a successful head of cauliflower. We've had some great surprises on the property, like these grapevines that we just planted for shade for the chickens, and they actually ended up producing a fantastic harvest of grapes for us this year. We were able to can gallons upon gallons of grape juice, and that was such an unexpected and beautiful surprise. We have learned that the Florida weave method for tomato plants just doesn't work like a cattle panel does. We've learned that corn is a crop that takes a ton of time. We've learned that you have to hill it up, or the strong summer winds will just blow your entire crop over. We've learned that you have to actually fertilize it 2 times during its growing cycle. We missed our second fertilization time because I just wasn't aware that it needed to be done, and I lost an entire crop of corn because it just didn't produce for us. We also know what it's like to take these crops out of the garden when you don't have a tractor or a large machine to do it for you. I've also had some failures along the way. I've had great ideas of how I was going to grow dried beans for my family, and that I was going to supply us with a year's worth of those so we didn't have to buy them anymore in bulk. And I've learned that even planting 200-foot rows of beans only gave us a few gallons of dried beans, and that was not going to be anywhere near what we needed for the year. We have had great failures and great successes. We've also had miracles in the garden, things that people will say to me, "Wow, I don't know how you grow all this." And I say, I don't know how I do it either. It's really by the grace of God. He has blessed this garden and He has blessed our efforts. I am so grateful that I can produce healthy food for my children and not have to worry about reading labels at the grocery store on whether something is bioengineered or what food dyes it contains. I am grateful that we have food here on the property in case the grocery stores don't have it. I love the fact that my kids and I know, and my husband knows, what it tastes like to get a vine-ripened raspberry or a pepper or a tomato from the garden, and how different that is from the store. Even a normal head of cabbage from the garden is so much different than what you can get at the grocery store. It's really amazing. And when I show my kids the difference between those items, I love seeing their eyes just light up like, wow, I had no idea. These are things that you won't experience unless you start your own garden and grow even the smallest amount of food. Even one small cherry tomato plant can show you how much better your homegrown produce is than what you are getting from other places. The garden also takes a lot of maintenance besides just harvesting and preserving that food. You have to make sure that your irrigation is in good repair so that you don't have leaks and part of your garden flooding and your plants dying because of that increase in the amount of water. You have to make sure that the rows and areas are mulched so that you're not fighting off weeds. During the growing season, you don't always have time for every task that you need to take care of. So the inside of your house becomes the storage area for lots of things like pumpkins and squashes, peanuts, and dried beans, until you can finally convince all of your kids to get outside late at night and help you shell all of these beans. We used a box fan to help us blow the chaff from the beans that we were beating inside those pillowcases. Sometimes I think when somebody drives by the house, they must think that we're crazy. And you can see the children in the background just going crazy with the pillowcases. It makes me laugh just watching it. But these are memories that we will keep. These are memories that they will have to pass down to their children. Remember the time that Mom made us do this on that freezing cold day out on the front porch at 9 o'clock at night? The kids were just as amazed as I was to see how little we got from such a huge harvest of beans this year. We had boxes upon boxes of dried beans stacked in the dining room, and this is all we got from them. I remember when I was a kid growing up in New England, and the kids in Maine would get 2 weeks off during the potato harvesting season. And I always thought that that was so unfair because we didn't live in Maine and we didn't get that 2-week vacation. Well, now I know that it wasn't a vacation, and those kids probably wish that they were in school during those 2 weeks. Although it is really hard work and sometimes you feel like you can't move at the end of the day, it is so rewarding to come into the house and feel accomplished about what you've done in the garden. I know that there's been so many times that I've drugged Nate down to the garden just to show him raspberries that are ripening, or a tomato that is the most beautiful one that I've seen all season. As you watch your plants go from seedling to fruit-producing plant, then comes the realization of all of the food that you now need to do something with. You bring that produce up to your house. You clean it in your kitchen that always seems dirty, always has dirt on the floor. The counters can never stay clean, and things just seem so cluttered because the amount of produce that you're processing. There are times during this season that I will work out in the garden and then come in and work for hours preserving food and not even eat a bite of it because I am just so turned off from how much food I'm dealing with every day that nothing seems appetizing to me. There are days that I spend the entire day in my kitchen and I don't go down to the garden because I have so much food to process. And by the end of the day, I end up ordering takeout for the kids because I'm too tired to make dinner after a full day of canning and dehydrating and drying and just any other way that you could possibly imagine to preserve food. We have done it here. But with all that being said, I wouldn't change a thing. I know that my children are learning valuable skills that I hope that they will take into their adulthood and learn how to produce their own food, learn how to grow their gardens and teach their children and have these same amazing experiences that they had as a child. Not only did we grow most of our own food during this particular year, but we also brought animals onto the property to help us meet our goals of being self-sufficient. We brought on dairy goats and had baby goats for the first time ever. It was one of the most terrifying and one of the most amazing things that I have ever witnessed in my life. We also raised 2 pigs and learned how to butcher them ourselves so that we didn't have to pay processing fees. We also went way overboard, ordering way too many baby chicks, more chicks than we could ever possibly need. But luckily, we are able to bless our friends and family with the abundance of eggs that these little guys provide us with. We now have 3 chicken coops to house all of our chickens, and I may or may not have ordered 15 turkeys for this coming spring. I'm not exactly sure where we will house them yet, but I'm sure I can convince Nate to build me one more coop for a few more birds. If you have been thinking about the idea of starting your own homestead or growing your own food, I highly recommend that you just take the leap and go for it. The things that you will learn and experience and the things that your children will be able to see are so worth all of the effort and the work and the time that you will put into it. I thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that this video gave you a glimpse into what it is like to grow your family's food for an entire year. I really, really hope that it was an inspiration, but also helped you to see that not everything is sunshine and rainbows, that there are some failures, but there are so many more successes and so many amazing things to be experienced and learned. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and if you liked it, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.